to introduce Dr. Richard Swinbourne. Dr. Swinbourne is the Sport Nutrition Team Lead and Sleep Scientist in the Singapore Sport Institute, SSI. He is a New Zealand-trained dietitian at the University of Otago and completed his sport dietitian course with the Sport Dietitians Australia. And he worked with the New Zealand Rugby Union as their high-performance nutritionist for the national All Black teams between 2007 to 2014. 10 years ago, Dr. Richard explored the world of sleep among elite athletes, completing his doctorate with Auckland University of Technology. Without further ado, let's welcome him to present on Optimizing the Esport Athlete with Nutrition and Sleep, Thinking Outside the Box and Inside the Fridge. Dr. Rico, please.
Thanks so much, Josh. Let me just get the technology organized here. There we are. How does that look to you, Josh? Can you see that okay?
Great.
Wonderful. Awesome. Hey, well, thanks for the introduction. Thanks for the very warm welcome and the invitation to speak today. I've really been looking forward to this presentation, actually, because I've never, ever once talked about esport to gamers or esport athletes or anyone associated with esport. So really enjoyed the build to this presentation and just looking at some of the really cool stuff that's out there. You know, that said, whilst I haven't worked in esport or taught esport, I have worked with a lot of athletes with a brain. Sometimes that's debatable, actually, but a lot of athletes with a brain. And that is what we're talking about today, isn't it? And this is my job today in the next 20 minutes to convince you of this, that esport athletes are brain-first athletes, and there is so much exciting potential to enhance a gamer's game with the power of nutrition and the power of sleep. There's one thing I know, a common denominator amongst all gamers is they don't like to lose, and they like to do better than they did yesterday, right? So, you know, some new tools for the toolbox in nutrition and sleep, and I think huge potential to literally take the game to another level, right? And you know, like such an exciting sport. Look at the screen here, like on the big stage, the big show. Look at the scale of the drama and the excitement. It's just like so cool. And there's some really, really innovative stuff going into optimizing the esport athlete around the world, in the US and Europe, particularly in Asia now as well. And so much scope you know, to do things better. So hope to inspire a little bit today. To be fair, I got a little bit of work to do. I don't actually like this team's logo very much, do I, as a sleep scientist? No, I don't. I don't sleep. They may as well have their logo say, I don't like to win, or I like to suck at my game or something. I don't sleep. Oh my gosh, they're like totally ignoring such a competitive edge in the world of sleep science, as we'll explore a little bit soon. I don't want to feel too rushed with this. Josh made the fatal mistake of saying there's no stress and pressure on me because I'm the last speaker, but I'm cognizant you've had a big day, so we'll have a bit of fun with it. I found this one as well. This team's got issues as well. I wish they'd make their mind up. Esport gamers oversleep. It's not good to undersleep, and it's not good to oversleep, is it? So you know, we got to find a balance somewhere in the middle. And then we talk about nutrition, and this is the archetypal image we have, isn't it? Fueling the midnight games, the 2 a.m. games with the power of pizza and some carbonated, caffeinated drink to supposedly keep the brain going, right? But, you know, it's not all bad news. And if you look around on the net, there's actually some really good stuff. You know, there's some ex-gamers and some scientists as well, you know, using a scientific evidence-based approach to fueling what I would call a brain-first athlete, and using a plethora of nutrients that interact and intersect with brain function, health, cognition, neural speed. You know, foods like omega-3 and fish oil, probiotics, prebiotics. Of course, you know, food talks to our brain through our brain, but also through our gut, and antioxidant-rich foods as well. And we'll talk a little bit about that. I'm not going to make the assumption that everyone on this line plays till 2 a.m. Fueled by the power of pizza. But, you know, if you do, hopefully I can inspire you to look a little bit wider than that, you know, to improve your health and to improve your game, because I know it will. Okay. And really what I want to talk about is Esport 3.0. So Esport 1.0 was probably the gamer in the basement or the bedroom, just having some fun with mates online. Esport 2.0 was those mates coming out of the basement, out of the bunker, out of the bedroom, and getting together in a common space, and elevating the innovation a little bit. And Esport 3.0 is taking it where, you know, what we would relate the world of an elite athlete to be. And this is what, you know, pro game outfits are doing now, is really treating gamers like a professional athlete. And like, it's really, really interesting. Like, I want to show you a little video. Actually, it'll give you a little insight, a little segue into what I mean here. So let me just bring this up here, and just turn your volume up if you can't hear it very well, but it should be okay. It's about 4 minutes, and we'll let it roll through.
These are professional video game players, training like professional athletes.
A fraction of a second in this business can mean the difference between millions of dollars. And if we can eat right, or we can sleep right, or we can train right to get that fraction of a second, then we're going to do it. We're going to hoist trophies.
They're an esports team playing Counter-Strike. And they're training in a way that's new for professional gaming.
1, 2, 3,
It's part of a much larger shift happening in the industry. As more money pours in, esports is starting to look a lot like traditional sports.
No, I don't think the average person has any idea how sophisticated the operations are at a top esports team.
This team is part of a massive gaming franchise called Complexity, which manages 9 teams that compete in more than 200 competitions around the world each year. In 2017, the owner of the Dallas Cowboys invested in Complexity. And last year, 2 of their teams moved to Frisco, Texas, to live and train alongside the NFL team. By April, they will have their own facilities on campus.
Esports 1.0, players lived in mom's basement and practiced with their teams online. Generally, they'd only seen their teammates once or twice a year at the big LAN events. Esports 2.0, gamers could come, live with their coach, live with their teammates. They'd get better a lot faster, but the problem was it wasn't a wholesome lifestyle.
Lake says we've entered Esports 3.0. Players still spend a lot of time playing and practicing, as much as 12 hours a day sometimes. But they also live healthier, more balanced lives.
They're going to talk about time management. You're going to talk about physical fitness. You're going to be talking about eating right. You're going to be talking about making sure that you're in healthy relationships, talking to the media, growing your brand, a number of different things.
Complexity hopes this kind of training will give their players an edge. Esports is a $1.5 billion industry. The biggest competitions are played in front of sold-out stadiums. They get sponsored by companies like Toyota and T-Mobile and broadcast on ESPN. Players are competing for prize pools as big as $25 million.
My whole lifestyle just completely changed. Like, you know, I was just a kid that went to college and played a lot of video games, and then all of a sudden I'm traveling all over the world from one tournament to the next, competing against these teams, playing on stages, and having like tons of fans.
Along with good gyms and a proper diet, moving in with the Dallas Cowboys is giving them access to technology that will let them analyze gameplay and replicate the atmosphere of a tournament.
You guys feel good?
Yeah.
They also fly in a performance coach to help with the psychological pressure of matches.
So a great gamer would do what? Thinking ahead, right?
Complexity says it's too early to see specific effects of their new training, but that they've seen some improvements in the team's performance since they've moved to Frisco. Lake says it's a long-term strategy, to both make better players and keep them playing longer. Right now, most players retire from professional gaming in their mid-20s. Players often cite the long hours and highly stressful competitions.
If we properly train them and we provide different aspects of a wholesome lifestyle, we're going to be able to continually extend that. And I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 10 years we see people playing upwards of 40 years old.
Josh, can you hear me okay?
Yep, good to go.
Beautiful. Okay, so there we go. There's Esport 3.0, and seeing a beautiful example out of team complexity at the Dallas Cowboys, embracing the power of sports science and the holistic sense, strength and conditioning coaches, sports psychologists and mental skills, nutritionists, sleep scientists, in an effort to optimize the brain first athlete. With sleep, drug ZZZ, as I like to call it, a safe and legal and natural performance enhancing drug for the brain that I want you guys to get on. And vitamin Me, which for me stands for Mother Earth, vitamin Mother Earth, real foods, whole foods, and foods that contain a magic chemistry that interacts and influences the speed and accuracy with which your brain can function, right? And so I just want to take you through some examples of that. But just firstly, I guess, what's really happening while we sleep in a very quick journey, because, we're all knocked out and we don't really know. But with people wearing wearables these days, we're all kind of aware that we have different sleep stages and different sleep phases within those stages as well. So, we have light sleep and we have deep sleep and we have REM dream sleep. And of course, each sleep stage has a different function. So deep sleep is centered mostly around physical regeneration, immunity and immune strength, and a very big academic learning component to deep sleep, where we move our short-term newly acquired memories from the hippocampus. You can think of it as like a USB, 2 gigs. Once it's full. You can't actually learn anything else until you have a sleep, and you push those memories to your neocortex, where you lock them away in a safe and secure long-term storage facility like the Swiss bank or something, right? Then of course we have light sleep, which we spend 50% of our night in. And for gamers, this one's a real critical one, because it is in light sleep rather than deep sleep where you practice motor skills. So if you've gamed in the day and you're practicing a new skill within that game, and you're trying to tell your brain to, use your fingers in a certain way, a certain sequence, or, you're trying to pull the trigger as fast as possible, or, use strategy or whatever, you actually practice that game again. You practice those skills that night during your light sleep. And here is the kicker: you get most of your light sleep in the last 2 hours of an 8-hour sleep. Right, so if you're only sleeping 5 or 6 hours, you're not getting much light sleep. You'll be getting mostly deep sleep, so you kind of physically regenerate and repair, but the brain really doesn't get what it needs. And similarly, dream sleep or REM sleep, most of that occurs in the last 2 hours of an 8-hour sleep as well. So if you're a 5 or a 6 hour sleeper, you might only be getting 10% potentially of the dream sleep that you need. And it is in dream sleep that we emotionally nourish ourselves. We derive a stronger psychological health. It's a little bit like putting a bulletproof vest around your brain, really. There's a lot of brain activity in REM sleep. Some parts of our brain are actually 30% more active when we sleep than they are when we're awake. And a lot of creativity and a strong sense of creative delivery as well through dreaming. If you're a Beatles fan, you'll know that that lovely song by Paul McCartney, Yesterday, and he actually wrote that tune in his sleep. He was on tour in a hotel, and he just woke up and he had this tune in his head. He'd been dreaming about it, and he got up and he sat down in front of his piano in his pajamas, and it just rolled out under his fingers. So the same as when we're awake in the day. We have a lot of different activities that we jam into the day. Our brain has a lot of activities that it jams in through the night as well, and some of them are really, really important to you as an e-gamer. And some of this has been evidenced as well through brain scanning. This was a really interesting study that taught people to play the piano, and they scanned their brains, MRI scan, whilst they were learning the activity and they're awake. And so we can see that at the top, on the top row. And then they scanned them again. They split them in half, and they sent half of them away for sleep. And they scanned them again while they were sleeping, and they looked at that significant overlap between the synaptic firing and the learning centers of the brain while they were learning the piano, and then looking at the overlap of those synaptic activations while they were asleep versus the bottom row where they were awake and learning nothing. So you can see that obviously, the learning centers had nothing to do. So, very little kind of learning activity, I suppose, in those parts of the brain. And so what we can see by looking at that overlap is that the learning centers in the brain were highly active while the subjects slept. And what they were doing essentially is going back, just as I described, they were going back and practicing that lesson, that newly acquired skill, all over again while they slept. So I guess what I'm trying to describe is a whole new paradigm, a whole new approach, a whole new way of thinking about training your game by actually training it while you sleep rather than training it when you're awake, okay? And training it much more effectively, I might say, because not only did they learn and practice while they were asleep, but when they wake these guys up, they play better. They play 20% faster and more fluid and 35% more accurately. Translate that to your game. Come back, let's have a chat about it. I'd love to know how your game enhances after you use the power of drug ZZZ. We all know that we get tired and we get slow when we get tired. And of course, the longer that we're awake, the slower we get. And there's just from this study, looking at sleep deprivation over time and the impact on reaction times. Take a look at the top here. So elapsed time awake. So we start the clock at 8 o'clock in the morning down below, and up top we can see that elapsed time accumulate in hours. And you can see there at around about the 16-hour mark, reaction times start getting much slower. Everything starts going south. At 17 hours, we are as drowsy and fatigued and slow as we would be if we were legally over the limit to drive from alcohol and toxicity, or from being drunk, basically, right? So once you've been awake for 17 hours, it is equivalent to being drunk. I don't know if you play better when you're sober or when you're drunk, but studies would strongly suggest that everything performs much more slowly after about that 16 to 17 hour mark. And the other thing to take note of here is the relative clock time. So, after midnight, everything's getting really, really slow. We are designed to be asleep at that time of the day. And I know a lot of e-gamers play into the early hours of the morning. And I just want to challenge you really and say you're training slow, like you're ingraining the wrong neural habits. Your brain is getting used to playing in a slow mode. You need to train like you intend to play, right? And you would actually be better, in my opinion, to wrap it up a little bit earlier and try and preserve some of that sleep. Now that's me with my white coat sitting on my high horse. And of course, it's just plain fun, isn't it? And it's a wind down time as well. But, if you're looking at periodizing your lifestyle and periodizing your approach, getting really serious about your game, then I think you need to start thinking really seriously about your sleep, your circadian rhythm, and your psychomotor vigilance performance throughout the day and throughout the night, and respecting that, I guess. And it's not just a one-night thing. Like we can see too that over consecutive days of sleep deprivation, reaction times get worse. You think about the average sleep time here in Singapore, 6.5 hours. So that's that middle line there, really. And you can see the decrement that we experience with a 6-hour night over multiple nights. We just get slower and slower and slower. And our number of performance lapses significantly increases. So, some powerful messages there to take away with respect to the impact of sleep on reaction time performance. And of course, the military have been looking at this and using this with the jet fighter pilots for many years. And those lessons learned from the military have flowed into professional sport like baseball, like basketball, like American football, and now into pro esport as well, which is just fantastic. I don't have time to talk about really how to enhance your sleep other than to encourage you to get more total sleep and to think about when you're sleeping versus when you're playing. Take a screenshot of this one. It's a good one. Sleep hygiene, it sorts out about 80% plus of all sleeping issues. And the takeaway really is to dissolve your sleep debt, get more sleep, and really enhance your brain and your nervous system performance with drug ZZZ. And now if we just jump from sleep into food, well, we kind of we're kind of continuing the story really, because there is this powerful intersection between nutrition and sleep. We know that there's a bi-directional relationship between nutrition and sleep. You know, how much we sleep affects what we feel like eating. So, you know, if we've had a short night's sleep, we're probably going to feel like the pizza and the Coke more. Whereas, you know, what we eat can also profoundly affect how we sleep. Okay. My grandmother used to tell me about drinking milk before bed and how it was good for my sleep. And science is starting to back this up. You know, milk is obviously a wonderful source of tryptophan, with which we make it's a precursor to serotonin and melatonin. And of course, there's lots of foods, we could consider them functional foods with respect to sleep, and how they can influence our propensity to get to sleep and stay asleep in our sleep architecture. A couple of really nice papers for you if you want to follow up. This one in 2008, Brain Foods. It's long been suspected that the relative abundance of specific nutrients can affect cognitive process and emotions, and newly described influences of dietary factors on neuronal function and synaptic plasticity have revealed some of the vital mechanisms that are responsible for the action of the diet on brain health. And of course, overlapping that with nutritional interventions to enhance sleep in athletes, a really nice paper by Shona Holson, a wonderful scientist and the most published sleep scientist in the world out of Australia. So look those two up, both really good reads. Just to give a sense of the functionality of food with respect to sleep, you know, let's have a look at our national dish. Oh, well, I don't know, is that controversial to say, Josh? I'm not sure. Chicken rice, national dish, I'm not sure. Depends on the audience, maybe. Anyway, I've chosen chicken rice. Obviously, you know, the power of protein, not only to let it help us feel full so we don't get hungry through the night, but, you know, supports us getting to sleep and staying asleep, you know, via branched chain amino acids, via essential amino acids, and neurotransmitters and melatonin precursors. Tryptophan is one that I described. Glycine is another, which actually decreases our body temperature, you know, after consumption in the evening. And it is, I mean, that's the mechanism of action for melatonin as well. It is a vasodilator, and it decreases our peripheral, increases our peripheral heat loss, decreases our core body temperature by about 0.5 degree, and that's actually a biological signal to go to sleep. Tryptophan, of course, is a melatonin precursor. Carbohydrates are an important one, actually. When we eat carbohydrates, obviously we secrete insulin, and that does it. It's an amazing hormone, but it does a number of things. One, obviously, it pulls sugar out of the bloodstream and pushes it into muscle cells and brain cells and heart cells. But it also pulls branched chain amino acids out of the bloodstream and leaves an exponential amount of tryptophan behind, which is then more abundantly available to cross the blood-brain barrier and into the brain and become available for serotonin synthesis and melatonin synthesis. About 4 hours pre-sleep seems to be the right time to have, you know, 50 to 100 grams of carbohydrate. If you're overweight, if you're not active, you know, try dialing that back a little bit, or get your carbohydrates from, you know, from vegetable sources instead, which you might find more filling. And of course, you know, from your grains and your greens, you know, we're getting micronutrients, enzyme cofactors, magnesium, zinc, vitamin B6, folate as well, all play a role in sleep and our sleep hormone responses in the evening, making melatonin. So, you know, you can kind of get a sense of how functional, you know, a relatively simple meal is, and how easy it is to get right, really. A little comment on caffeine, because, you know, if you look at any marketing around Esport, you know, there are caffeinated energy drinks all over the show. Like, they're very quick on the trigger, quite literally. You know, they've got good imaging, good marketing, you know, loads of money. If you look at what Red Bull does, sponsoring, you know, Formula One teams, and like quite incredible. And I know it's pushed really hard with e-gamers, particularly, you know, in an effort to keep people awake into the late hours of the night. Only a couple of studies actually looking at caffeine and e-gaming performance. One study back in 2019 took a group of 9 elite e-gamers playing League of Legends, gave them a caffeinated drink called Reload, and assessed reaction times, attention spans, memory, fatigue, and found no effect, actually, did not help the gamers at all with their game performance. And then there was another study which gave gamers a little bit more caffeine, about 3 milligrams per kilogram. Okay, so that's, you know, like if you're 70 kilograms, that's like probably a double espresso, or a little bit more. Okay, and they actually had a first-person shooting game that they assessed reaction times on and target accuracy, and that amount of caffeine actually helped the gamers out, and they played a little better. So, you know, the jury's hung. It's really important to note that caffeine hangs around in the body for a long time, 4 to 6 hours half-life. So if I have that double shot of espresso at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it's still a single shot for me at 8. When you know, when this lark, I'm not a night owl, I'm a lark. You know, I'm trying to sort of just, you know, wind down a little bit in the evening. I'm still racing on caffeine. So just take note of that, I guess. And really what we're talking about is functional food for those athletes at the Cowboys, you know, physique trait remodeling, exercise adaptations, healthy body, healthy mind, sleep quality as well. You know, if we jump from the topic of milk to the topic of antioxidants, some really interesting stuff going on here. I mean, if we look at sources of antioxidants, cherries, berries, kiwi, really strong, beet as well. And another one, another interesting study actually, black currant juice. There's quite a lot of stuff going on around black currants, particularly back home where I'm from in New Zealand, looking at the cognitive impact of black currant juice. And they also use a black currant extract or powder, looking at things like attention and mood and brain activity. And this particular study, you look it up and have a read, found that it did profoundly decrease anxiety and brain fatigue in the subjects. It increased their alertness, and it made them faster in reaction times. And of course, you know, really, really powerful for immune strength, really amazing for delayed onset muscle soreness and damping down secondary inflammation as well. You know, with the fatigue that's associated with the sport, I think e-gamers need to be really hitting their blues, their purples, their greens, and their black foods, and really trying to fill up on antioxidant-rich foods as much as they can. And another quite functional food for gamers, I think, is omega-3. And we all think about omega-3 as being an anti-inflammatory food, but of course it's very, very rich in omega-3s as well, isn't it? And our brain is just laced with omega-3, and we know that it does increase, you know, synaptic activity and the speed at which your brain functions. You know, as well as a whole lot of other things, including improved sleep. And if you work in the field of pediatrics, you'd be really interested in a study that looked at over 500 children, gave them 600 milligrams a day of DHA, docosahexaenoic acid, which is one of the fatty acids of omega-3, and gave it, that was sourced from algae from the sea. And incredibly, like, they started sleeping an hour more each night compared to the control group, and woke up 7 times less. And the authors of that study proposed that DHA is involved in melatonin synthesis. So, you know, here's a food that has about 6 or 7 or 8 different, you know, functional properties, and you know, and assists for us as humans and as gamers as well. And so, you know, encourage you to eat fish 2, 3, 4 times a week, salmon, sardines, mackerel, unagi, eel, or, you know, if you don't eat fish or don't like it, you know, a fish oil capsule, and it could really help your game as well. And this is where we're really driving. Hypnos is the Greek god of sleep. And here he is anointing a Greek with a special potion to give him deep dreams and a long blissful night. And this is really what we're trying to achieve through science. You know, I think that we'll see more of this over the next 5 years or so, through pro gamers, these influences over the tryptophan, serotonin, melatonin pathway, and damping down inflammation maybe, and nourishing the brain and activating particular responses in the brain, such as reaction times and attention spans and memory and strategy and fatigue, and accuracy, right? So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. There's your e-game nutrition sleep plan. We talked about getting more sleep, didn't we? And improving your reaction times through sleep. Talked about the power of some carbohydrate and protein and vegetables for those functional nutrients in your evening meal. The power of tart cherries and maybe if you're getting really active and you're training in the evening, some sort of protein source, dairy protein before bed. A couple of kiwi has been shown to improve sleep 1 hour before bed. We talked about fish oil. We talked about manipulating and periodizing caffeine as well, so that we get the best of both worlds. With that, I would like to say thank you very much. It's the end of a big old day for you. It was fun to present. Really enjoyed it. And back to you, Josh.